My personal vehicle is a 2021 Subaru Outback. I have the Touring XT model, and I love the vehicle, but one downside is that it comes with a donut as a spare tire instead of a full-size spare. So it's been my intention to replace that donut with a full-size spare because I do a lot of traveling and a lot of it's off the road. My girlfriend was surprising me with a birthday present of a full-size spare tire with a matching wheel. And today I'm going to talk about installing this, if I can, into the spare tire well inside the rear hatch of the 2021 Subaru Outback Touring XT. I think everything is going to fit as far as space for the tire. The problem is going to be that the Touring XT comes with a little foam insert that holds your jack and some tools for replacing the tire, and I don't think that will quite fit once you take out the little donut and put in the larger spare, the larger full-size spare. But we're going to try to make it work today. Hopefully it will, without too much butchering, and that's what this video is about. So these are the vehicle wheels that come standard on the Touring XT, and my girlfriend has purchased one just like it from a Subaru dealer. This is the new tire and wheel assembly, straight from Subaru, and I'll be putting that in today, hopefully. So in the rear of the Subaru, it comes out in three parts, at least the floor cover does. First you want to take this part out, and it just lifts up, and you want to pull it towards you, and it'll come all the way out. There are two little, I don't know what you call them, I call them wings, that snap into place. You can just pull straight up on them. On the reverse, you can see that they've got these little pins. They fit into these two receptacles. You'll keep that in mind when you're putting it back in. You want to line those up before you press down. They both come out that way, straight up. Once the large and the two wing floor panels have been removed, you'll see that you've got this really nice foam, I guess it's kind of like a tray. It holds your tire tools. It can hold your retractable cover when you're not using it, and underneath that you'll find that you've got your jack. This whole thing lifts out, but the first thing you want to do if you have this option is to remove this, and I think this comes as standard equipment, so all the Subaru Touring XTs will have it. It just lifts straight up, and both sides come out, and you just gotta kind of put it at an angle to pull it all the way out. Now we're just left with the tray assembly. It's not that heavy. It lifts straight up, and once you remove it, you can see that you've got the spare tire, the donut, down inside the spare tire well. You want to rotate this counterclockwise to loosen it. It has a long threaded bolt that goes through the rim of the tire and into a nut plate fastened to the bottom of the spare tire wheel well. With that out of the way, you can just reach down and pull out your spare. This is a side-by-side comparison of the donut and the full size. You can see the advantages of having the full size. It's just like the rest of your tires. This is a temporary use and has limited speeds, whereas this, you can get back on the road and your vehicle will operate just the way it was before you got the flat. Both the donut and the full size are going to mount with the rim shiny side facing down. So you want to go ahead and turn this over so that it looks like this. There's some shipping paperwork that came attached to the wheel when my girlfriend ordered it for me. I'm just going to leave that there. So what you want to do is slide this all the way in, and then you want to pull it back until the hole lines up with the nut plate that mounting pin bolt goes into. The mounting pin is just going to line up with the little threaded area at the bottom, and this time you're going to rotate it clockwise to tighten it all the way down until it's nice and snug. Don't go crazy tightening this down. Hand tight is fine. Remember, when it comes time for you to use this thing, you're probably going to be on the side of the road changing a tire. The last thing you want to do is to try to fight getting this over torqued mounting pin out. So just make it hand tight so that you can move it by your hand. As long as the tire doesn't move around and vibrate and slide around, then it's tight enough. It's just there to keep it from moving around. So don't go crazy tightening that thing down. The next part is probably why you're watching this video. When you go to put back in the foam tray, you'll see that because of the higher width or the extra thickness of the full-size spare, there's not enough clearance for this tray to go all the way down like it could when the temporary donut size spare tire was in there. So since it won't go all the way down, your panels, your floor panels, are not going to sit flush and the whole thing just won't work. So today what I'm going to be experimenting on is cutting this down, this foam part down, so that it will fit. And what I'm seeing is up underneath here, there's 3 areas where this foam panel seems to be touching this tire. And they're marked out by this part right here where my thumb is. It has the 30 written on it. And then these 2 nubs here and here. I'm going to experiment with just cutting those off to give myself more clearance. And I'm hoping that with that additional clearance, this foam panel will be able to drop down all the way so that it's flush and the floor panels can be put back in. Now this one right here is a cavity for the jack to fit down into. So if you remove your jack, you'll see that the center part has an extra height right here. And that height drops down into that hole. With this being cut off, that hole will be open to the floor below. I've looked at the bottom of this and I don't see any impressions of this metal piece in that foam, so I don't think that it supports any weight. I think the majority of the weight is supported on its wings here, and it just hangs down in that hole without really touching anything. So I don't think that'll be a problem. The other 2 nubs don't seem to basically be holes for anything. They're just attached to the bottom and don't go all the way to the top. So I'm going to get together with my steak knife to just cut through this thing, and we'll see where we go from there. I'm going to do the cutting outside of the vehicle so I don't have a whole bunch of foam pieces laying inside this wheel well that I'll have to vacuum out later. Let's see how it goes. Before the cutting starts, I'm going to go ahead and remove all my tire tools. If you forget which order they go back in and you can't use those shadows to make a decision, then you can always watch this video and see the way they were before you took them out. I'm going to use the old donut spare as a work platform. So looking at this thing, I can see that I could cut this all the way down flush right here along this line. But that wouldn't do any good because I'd still have these nubs sticking up, touching the tire. So I don't need to go any lower, I don't think, than these 2, I guess I'll call these feet, these 2 feet next to it. So I'll go somewhere in between the top of this and the bottom of this as my cut. So my high-tech tool today is just a steak knife. I'm just using a very quick and short sawing motion to make my way through. It's kind of tough to hold the camera at the same time, but I will try doing it. Give you an idea, just like that. Real easy. Not pushing very hard this way. I'm just letting the teeth do the work, and I'm just moving it back and forth and trying to keep it nice and flat just for aesthetic looks. So I've made the cut. It wasn't a perfectly flat cut. It seemed to kind of want to bow kind of downward as I went, but like I said, it doesn't really matter as long as it's kind of in between the top of these feet and the floor. I think I will go ahead and cut off a little bit more on this right edge just to make it a little more pleasing to myself. I'm kind of a nut for having things nice and level. There we go. I just went ahead and cut it down some more and made it a little more flat. While I was doing this, I reminded myself there are hot knives on the market that are heated blades that would probably cut right through this nice and smooth, like a hot knife through butter. But I don't want to go out and spend a bunch of money to do this, and heck, everybody probably has one of these at home. So I thought I'd make the video just using tools that are available to just about anybody without spending anything else. Go ahead and rotate this around so I can go ahead and cut off the next two. And I think I'm just going to do a similar thing. I'm just going to lay the blade flat with this and just use it as my guide to cut all the way through this thing on both of these. There we go. Just gonna turn it over and give it a few taps to shake off any loose pieces of foam. Now let's try to see if it fits. Well, it don't fit. Now, even though these parts have been cut off, it's still touching here and this back panel here. I've already done some cutting on this thing, so it's not going to cost me anything to cut it some more. The next things I'm going to cut out is this section here and this section where my finger is, this whole area here. What I'm going to attempt to do is cut out everything around this, all the way around, so basically everything is as flat as this part where my hand is. The downside to doing that is when I do, I'm going to cut off the majority of the areas where the tools sit, where they might just fall all the way through. I don't know until I do it, but we're gonna do it. You know, rather than cut off this whole thing, I thought I would just cut off the areas where the tire was and leave as much of this tray as I could. There's no sense in taking off this whole thing. This whole thing doesn't touch the tire. The tire comes around like this, and that's where it's sitting. So I just took off this section here, and I'm gonna do the same thing over here, and we're gonna see how that works. So let's talk about where we're gonna make these cuts. So from the side of this foot, I'm gonna go over probably about an inch and a half, right about there. I'll do the same thing over here, and I'm gonna use this as my mark as where to cut. At the top, I started at this cross rib right here. You see how it goes here and here. I use this side as my guide, so I made a cut right there. So on this side, I've got the sides here and here. I'll use this side as my guide, and I'll cut right about there where this scratch is. And then on this part, I'm just kind of connecting this cut with this cut in kind of a curving way, just like a tire would curve as it went around. Just trying to get it close. There we go. And on this part, I'm just going to cut across, basically a line from level from this all the way across to here, kind of like I did level from here all the way across. Again, we're not looking for perfection. This is just an experiment with me. Turn it around. The next cut is going to be flush with this piece right here where my finger is. I'm just going to lay my blade flat on here and cut using this as a guide to go all the way across and to where I started right there. There we go. And on this part, I'm just going straight down and across, so from this all the way to there. Now, even though from this side I've cut all the way around, it's still not just going to lift off. And that's because there are still pieces on the other side that are attached. But you can flip this over, and on the inside you can see where your cuts have been made. You can use that as your guide to saw through any pieces that didn't quite get cut. So from this side, you can see where the blade has come through. I'm just going to continue that line on across. All right, my cuts are finished. I put the pieces that have been cut out back in place so you can kind of get an idea of where your cuts are going to be. I'm going to move around it kind of slow so that you can have a good visualization of how everything gets cut. You can see that cut line going all the way around on both of these little sections. So that now, when they're removed, we're going to have a little more room for this panel to sit down. I'm starting to be concerned that maybe the tools aren't going to fit in here the way they used to. But I can always put the tools in a bag and stick them in the back of the car. What I want is my panel to lay nice and flat on my floor panel. So let's see how this looks in the car now. All right. I haven't cut the back end, so it's still gonna stick up a little in the back. But I can see that the front part is now laying flat enough where I can tell that once that back part is cut off, it's going to be flush. So let's work on the back part now. With the parts being cut out, you can kind of see the curvature of the tire, and you can sort of map out where we need to cut. Like I said, we don't need to cut the whole thing, just where the tire is. So I'm going to try to put this in place, line it up the best I can as it would normally sit, and then I'm going to use the blade of my knife to mark the edges of where I think that tire is going, so it'll be my guide when I go to cut. Man, I'd be embarrassed to tell you how many times I've started a video and finished it and realized that the whole thing was shot upside down. That was what happened last time. So this is take 2. Anyways, I've got this thing set in here about the same way it would be if it were sitting flush. Everything's kind of lined up and square, close enough. I can see my tire now, so I know where I need to cut. I need to cut from about this point, and I'm going to make me a little mark on the underside here, over to there. And I need to cut from about this point. I'm going to make me another little mark over to there. Figuring out where the rest of the tire is just a matter of kind of like visual geometry, if that's such a thing. I can see the curvature of the tire, and I can kind of anticipate where it goes around. So I'll be using that as my guide. And from what I can tell, it looks like it curves so it goes to just about to where the treads of the tire would just go kind of to the top of this tool tray cutout. So I'm going to just know that about right here on the other side is where I need to make my cut. I'm just going to push this all the way through so I can find that part later. So that's about how I'm going to cut it. With this out, I can turn this over and see that where my knife is, there's really nothing that big of a deal sticking out on the bottom. I just need to cut this little section right here on the bottom. So I don't need to go as far as I thought I might. I just need to cut off this little section here. So I'm gonna get to work doing that. So I can see the 2 lines I made when I had it sitting in the car. There's one there, and I extended this one right there. And all I did basically was I took my little notch here and I lined it up so I made a longer cut here just for reference, just so I could see it. And then if I'm looking at this from here, if I go all the way around to the top of this and then back around to that line right there, it's pretty much going to take out this whole thing anyway. So I'm just not going to worry about trying to cut a curve. I'm just going to cut out all of this section that's sticking up right here, including these little notches right here, these things. So it's all coming out. All right, once again, I've got this thing in place after cutting it off so that you can see where I made my cut all the way around the edges here. I decided to go across here instead of cut this whole thing out because I realized, because of where my marks are, that this isn't going to interfere with the tire anyways, and neither would this one. So as I came across, I went across this one and on around. Pretty simple. Now, once that was cut, I had to go across it again, and what I had to force myself to do was to try to get my knife blade in there all the way to the hilt, because I'm trying to get a deep cut all the way around, because in between here and here there's a lot of little connecting pieces, and you want to slice through all of those. So get your knife blade all the way in. And on this, you're using short little sawing motions. Don't worry about pushing too much. Let the teeth do the work. Just make yourself a practice of just sawing, saw, and just letting it go as the foam gives way. It's a lot easier that way, and you get a cleaner cut. So now with that out of the way, you're kind of left with this. Let's see how that looks on the other side. Well, That looks pretty fucking terrible. No tools are going to be able to fit in here anymore. They're just going to fall right through anyways. So I'm just going to clean this up as best I can. This is all, there's no sense in keeping this here anymore. It's just going to fall out, and my tools, I'm going to have to find another idea for. But I'm good at finding ideas, so I'll do that. Here we go. I'm just going to go ahead and clean these up. And to clean these up, I'm just going to turn this over, and I'm just going to use my knife to cut around the edges that are just free hanging like this so that they fall off. All right, I've taken my knife blade and I've just basically gone around all the edges to clean that up where I needed to. Turning it over, you can see now that those pieces have been removed. And though it doesn't look perfect, it looks a lot better than it did. Let's go ahead and pick it up and see if we can fit it inside the vehicle. See if there's anything else we need to cut off of this thing. All right, here we go. Let's stick this in here. It looks like it's about flush in the back. Up front, still got a little bit to go. I've got about an inch here before it's nice and flush. And where it's touching the wheel is, looks like it's right down in here. You can kind of see where that's sitting on the rim. I'm gonna grab my knife blade and I'm going to mark the areas where the wheel starts to touch the foam. And then when I turn it over, I can see which areas I need to cut. So I know that starting about right here, and this doesn't mean I'm gonna cut through here, it's just a mark. And right about here. So let's turn that around. So looking at this thing, I can see now that I should have cut it flush to begin with. Remember at the beginning of the video, there was a foot here, there was a foot here, and then there was a foot in the middle. And I said to cut that foot somewhere between the top of the foot on the side and the floor. I should have just gone all the way to the floor here, the very bottom. Now I need about an inch, and cutting this straight across here isn't gonna give me an inch all the way, but it's gonna give me some. So I'm gonna make that cut first, just try to make this as flat as possible to see how well that lines up. You know, with cutting, you can always cut off more, but it's really hard to add back on. So we'll take it off a little by little. Okay, so I've cut that about flush. Let's see how it lines up. Well, after cutting that off, I see that it's just about the same. It didn't change it a whole lot, maybe 1/4 of an inch, and that's really all I took off. So now I'm gonna focus more on cutting off these two little edges right here where I made my marks and cut those away. It's basically these corners right here. Maybe I'm just gonna take a chunk out of both of these, and we'll see what we can do. So I used my knife blade to make a line as to where I'm gonna cut. I'm just gonna get rid of these corners. We're gonna see how that turns out. I don't need to go too far back. I'll show you the way it looks in the end so you'll understand. That's how I cut it, just kind of a wedge shape. I ended up with something that kind of looked like this. So just a cutout like that is all I did. Give you an idea of how it looks there. Just make your cut similar to that and let's see how it looks. All right. Okay, now this is going down flush on here, but there's still something back here. A little something right in here. Keeping it from laying flat, so let's have a look underneath there. Okay, yeah. So I think it's this section right here. I wonder if it's these tabs. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's that little pad that I said to leave. We should have cut that off. So going back to steps previous to this one, just disregard what I said about leaving these little parts right here. Just cut them right off flush. Let's do that now. Okay, so I went ahead and cut those two pieces off. Let's see how it works out. Well, it's really, really close. It's just a little bit, maybe a finger height. And what I can tell is that on the bottom, I didn't make my cuts very clean. There's parts that stick up a little higher than the side. So I'm gonna go back in here and try to cut everything as flush as the bottom side of this this little panel, this tray. So I've gone back around all my edges and I've just tried to cut it as flat as I can, just using my hand. Wherever I felt it kind of sticking up, I just trimmed it back down a little bit. Try to get all that nice and level. Let's see how it works out. Okay, that is looking better in all the areas, except still a little bit too high on here. Now that I've cut all the way flush with the bottom, the only thing I can do is now start to kind of cut in a curvature to allow for the roundness of the sidewalls here. So I'm going to once again use my knife to mark the areas where the sidewall is touching the foam, and then I'm going to little by little dig out those areas. So in the back it's okay, the front it looks okay. I'm wondering if I might have to do that here too. I don't know, we'll have to try it. But I can tell that it's just this area between here and here that I'm gonna have to dig out. Here and here. You can kind of see where the tire goes. So it's just that area in there. Get my knife and I'll mark it. Now I'm marking the top so that when I turn it over I can see it on the bottom, but it's basically from about right here and about right here all the way to about right here. And make sure I got this lined up right. See the sidewall's right there, so about right there. Okay. Seeing my marks there, and seeing my mark right there, I can know that kind of on this curved line I need to dig out from the other side. So I'll try to trace that on the back side to show you what I mean. This thing's been so torn up that it's hard to draw lines, but there's my mark on one end, and I know that my mark on this side is basically right at the corner, and the corner is right there, so I can make a line from the corner all the way to my little mark there and know that that area and over is where the sidewall is touching. I'll be repeating the same thing on that side. You know, when I'm at work, working for the Y, I always wear safety equipment, safety glasses, I wear my safety gloves, try to stay safe. When I'm doing stuff here on my own, not at work, all that safety stuff goes out the window, and that's very foolish of me. That's stupid. So when you're working with this knife, you ought to wear a pair of gloves, good heavy set of gloves. And I don't know if eye protection is really that necessary, but definitely some gloves, because I already caught the end of my thumb with that stupid knife because I wasn't wearing the right safety stuff and I got careless. Just don't let that happen to you. Take it from me. Take an extra moment to put on some gloves. All right, well, I have fixed the leak on my thumb. All we had around the house was these little girly Band-Aids. I think that's a little dog and a bee. I'm secure enough in my manhood that I can wear this Band-Aid without being embarrassed. All right, back to work. So I've gone ahead and hollowed out that little section along the line that I found. That line went from here to here. So on either side, I've kind of hollowed out some area by just removing the material. And I did it down to about the height of my finger, because that's about how far off we were. That's gross. Anyways, I'm gonna do the same thing over here. There's my line, and I'm gonna go a little bit to the left and the right of this line to hollow that area out so that that tire sidewall will nestle down in there just right. I'm gonna be honest and transparent with you. I'm over at my girlfriend's place. I don't have any gloves over here. I'm too lazy to get in the car and go drive over and buy gloves. So even though I just made a big speech about being safe, I'm being unsafe by keeping on not wearing gloves. And I'm at my girlfriend's house, and that's why I'm using a steak knife as my tool and not something, you know, a little bit more toolish. Don't use me as an example on safety. Do the right thing and put on some gloves. Okay, so I went ahead and hollowed all this area out. On this, folks, what you want to do is take it out little by little. Don't go hog wild and just take out a whole bunch, or God forbid, cut that whole thing off, because you want to keep this part in to keep the panel rigid. Just take out this little by little, because you want this foam to sit on top of the tire so that the tire provides support for the panel. If you take out too much foam, there'll be a gap between the foam and the tire, and it will tend to bow downward. You don't want that, especially when you have something heavy sitting on the floorboard back there. So I went ahead and just extended this cut from here. This is where we had cut off that piece that held all the tools. You can see the outline of it. From there, I went ahead and just kind of came out, and I went down about 1/4 of an inch, or not 1/4 of an inch, probably about 3/4 of an inch. It's basically the thickness of my finger, which you have no, I mean, I don't even know why I'm using that as a guide. You don't have my finger. So I have a feeling up here is going to be a problem too. I'm going to put this panel in and check it. I think this is going to hit the tire, and there's no really reason to have it here. I think I'll just go ahead and cut it out, and we'll go from there. Hollowing that out here and here really made a difference. It's sitting a lot more flush now when I press down on it. The only area it's still touching is here. Off camera, I put this in already, and I've made a line of where I'm going to cut. I'm going to cut right here all the way across and around, which is basically where these pieces are touching the tire, and they should hopefully just fall right down in there after that. Here we go. Man, what you talking about? Look at it, this falls right down in there just right. Nice and flush. So yeah, I made that little cut to kick it out. So here's what we ended up with. Now let's try to put the tire tools back as best we can. I'm pretty sure we can get the retractable cover still in there. I think we have enough support for that jack. The place where those little tire tools went, it's gone. So I'm gonna have to find a new place for those. I'll see what I come up with. All right. Yeah, that fits in there just fine. Let's see about this thing. Yep, that fits in there okay too. All right, so we've got a little hollow space here that I could use to put my tools. I'm gonna mess around with this, and I'll show you on camera what I came up with. Well, here's what I did. I usually carry these microfiber cloths with me anyway, so that when I go through a car wash, I can hop out and grab these and dry off the car from all the little drips and stuff that it has. And I realized I can just put these tools kind of just around the edges of all this, and they don't move around that much. I also carry with me these things. They're basically like little elastic screens that you put over your window when you're kind of sleeping in your car or camping out. You roll down the window, you slide these things over. It's like a big sock, and it makes your roll down window into a screen door. And then I've got this thing here, which is the same thing, except it goes on your sunroof, and it's got little magnets and stuff that hold on the screen over the sunroof so bugs can't get in, but you can still get air. And then I keep this thing, which is just a little paint repair pin that seals chips so that they don't get into something that's causing rust. And I think I could probably put my bug tar remover down in here. Let's see if we can make this all work. All right, we got to put our wings in. Remember, they've got those two little white basically pins that go into these receptacles here, so you want to line those up and just push them down flat. Same thing with this side. And stick our panel back in here. Lays nice and flat. Forgot to put my goof off in here because I need that for all the pine tree sap falls on these things. Alright. Slide my cargo mat back in. And let's see, put my go bag in. My air mattress. Tell you what, looks like it's gonna work out just fine. I still have a whole lot of I guess solidity. It feels very solid, so there's no flexing or anything because I cut out pieces of that panel. I'll do a road test and I'll make sure that there isn't a whole bunch of like rattling or anything. If there is, I'll report back as to what happened and what I did to fix it. I'm gonna grab a trash bag, clean this all up. All right, time for a test drive. We're gonna see if there's any bumps or squeaks or rattles. I'll go through an area.
We hope you give us a try with this special offer.
That was a radio. That doesn't have a whole lot of, I mean, it does have a whole lot of bumps and stuff, and we'll see what we hear. Yeah, I'm not hearing nothing from back there. I'm hearing a little rattling, but that's from this little mount that's for the holding the phone. But nah, it's good back there. It don't make any noise. That's good. Yay! Well, that was fun. I didn't know how that video would work out, but it worked out all right. I hope if you decide to do that, that it helps you, you know, get a full-size spare tire in there. And I really appreciate you taking the time to watch my video. Please like and subscribe to my channel because I'm trying to earn enough money through YouTube to retire in Belize. Another thing I'd like to point out is when I was at the car dealership, they told me that the Onyx version of the 2021 came with a full-size spare, and it also comes with a tray that will fit down over that spare and hold all your tools and stuff. So if you want to spend the extra coin, you can go to the dealership and just buy the full-size spare and the tray for the Onyx, and it should fit in there just right. I haven't like gone and like confirmed that, but I don't see any reason it wouldn't work. One way to tell is you could just drive your 2021 Subaru up to the dealership, ask them if you could see an Onyx in a 2021, and then ask them real quick if that would be interchangeable, and just see if it would fit. If it will, great. If not, then this will work, and it'll also save you some money. Thanks for watching.